Hey, welcome back to our classroom. Today I am joined by J.E. Thomas, and we're going to be talking about Control Freaks, a book that she authored that is a fascinating journey through the middle school experience, which I appreciate as a former middle school principal. So thank you for capturing the essence of the middle school mob, as I like to call them. And, why don't we start by you just sharing a little bit about yourself? Let's get to know you. What do the initials JE stand for? Let's start there.
Okay. JE stands for Janice Elizabeth. And I've gone by Jan all my life. And so I thought when I was going to write this book, I would just be Jan Thomas. But guess what? There are two that I know of published authors named Jan Thomas. So I thought, okay, great. I'll just use my initials. Didn't find anybody on Google, put up my author page. There were some J.E. Thomases as well. So just go with the flow.
Thank you. There's a story behind everything, right? I wasn't expecting this. I'm like, it must be something tied to her childhood and her family. No, there were other authors with the name Jan Thomas. So thank you for clarifying that. Okay, tell me about your educational journey.
Sure. So I went to an urban parochial school from grades 1 through 8. And then I went to a suburban independent school for grades 9 through 12, and then went on to college. I know that a lot of people have had different experiences going from a city school to a suburban school, but I actually thrived at that independent school. And part of the reason was I am an incredible introvert. I mean, you look up introvert on Google and there's my picture. So I needed a school that had a low teacher to student ratio. I needed teachers who knew me, who knew my strengths, who knew my struggles. And that was just the perfect environment for me.
That's awesome.
Then,
And it's good to
yeah,
hear that. It's good to hear the diversity of experiences. I mean, I
yeah.
had a terrible experience in the independent school that I went to. It was a boarding school. It was ninth grade. I couldn't get out of there fast enough, but I transferred to another independent school, a day school, and I had a much better experience there. Overall, it was a great experience as a learner. Ended up
Ah,
working there years later, and as an adult, I had somewhat of a different experience. But as a learner, wonderful 3 years of high school.
guess what? I also wound up working at the same independent school that I attended years later, right? But yeah, it's a different experience when you're working, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. You
Those
know,
hours are long. The
yes,
hours are long.
they're long, but it's also the nature of the relationships change. Right now, there's
Mm-hmm.
different dynamic. You were my teacher, now you're my colleague, and
Yes.
and sometimes it might be fine, and we click and we connect, and there's an extension of the relationship we had. And other times there might be friction because now I'm seeing you differently, and I'm listening to the way you're speaking about students, and it's not landing the right way. That was some of my experience with certain folks.
Yeah. With me, I'm older than you are, certainly. So, but there were still some teachers that taught me when I went back to work. And one was a lovely woman who did her best when I was a student. She taught dance. And so she did her best to teach someone who is rhythmically challenged. I'll just put it that way. So it was just so much fun to see her again.
That's great.
And talk. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're an introvert. You're the definition of introvert.
Yep.
So then I'm thinking, why authorship? Because authorship, as you know, does require you to get in front of the audience.
There is that. Yes. Um, so the part of the creative process is very solitary. And that worked really well for me. This whole part of going out and talking to people, I'm adjusting to. Thank you for being so welcoming and encouraging and bringing my my stress level down, my confidence level up. I really appreciate it. This is a learning curve. I'm in a learning curve right now.
Look at you out here doing a podcast tour and everything. That's not introvert like.
Well, my career was in communications, and so I spent my career helping other people get in front of the camera and position themselves. So intellectually, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but yeah, it's it's hard. It's hard.
It
You are
is.
making this so easy for me. Thank you again.
Well, I appreciate your vulnerability because I think other people might find it to be hard also, but it's good for us to model this example. Hey, we're not shying away from the hard things.
Yes.
We'll confront them, and little by little, hopefully, there's more comfort in being able to take on such challenges as getting in front of the public if you're an introvert. So for my introverted people, we see you. We see you. But now I want to transition. I want to get into the book.
Okay.
All right. So you wrote a book titled Control Freaks. Are
did.
you a control freak? And if not, where did this come from? Where did this title come from? Where did the concept come from?
So fortunately, I'm not on any sort of truth modeling apparatus right now. So I can tell you, I can look right in the camera and say, control freak me? No, absolutely not.
Fine.
Never,
Then where
ever,
did the
ever.
concept come from? Because some of these characters are high strung. I was feeling a little bit stressed out. Little bit. I'm like, I need them to bring it down a few notches.
So I'm going to break that into actually 3 parts. So even though I will tell you I'm not a control freak, probably everybody who knows me would say exactly the opposite.
Jen, now it's coming out now.
Now it's coming out. Yes. So when I was younger, or when I was growing up, my parents set very high expectations. And part of what happens is I tried to control the narrative. I tried to exceed expectations, and that is actually a controlling behavior. I'll admit, yeah. So that's me. And then the other part of control freaks is certainly while I was at school, but also because as an author, I like observing people. I could see that kids today they're obsessed with controlling the narrative of who they are. They want to be the thinnest, the prettiest, the buffest, the smartest, you name it, the snarkiest, the whatever. And it's that element of control that I try to infuse into these characters. I think that both middle schoolers and their parents are going to relate to kids trying to control things. And in terms of you being stressed out, yes, that means I hit the nail on the head, because I think one of the big challenges for educators right now is when you spend so much time planning something and you envision in your head how it's going to be and how kids are going to react, and then they get it and they're just all over the place. So it's kind of like herding cats. So the fact that you were feeling a little tension there, it's like, great, I got that.
Yes. I mean, there was so much going on with these characters, so much going on with these young people in terms of the notion of competition, right? Like competition in all these different categories. You got the arts kids and the sports kids and the music kids and the engineering kids and the math kids. So much competition. And I'm a competitive person. But I mean, that level of competition, it reminded me of certain boarding schools and what I've witnessed or what people around me have witnessed that have worked at such schools with these kids that are so high strung on being the top in everything, that sometimes is detrimental, not just to the environment, but to them. So that was interesting to think about that and think about like, all right, you know, where can this get unhealthy? But also what is healthy about this, right?
Yeah.
Again, as
Yeah.
a person who appreciates competition, I used to be a coach, basketball coach, so I get it. But at the same time, you know, I wonder sometimes, like, all right, you know, what are we focused on? Why are we so focused on it? How can we help our young people maintain the balance? And so I want you to, why don't you kind of lean into that a little bit? Tell
Great.
me, yeah.
Okay, that's a really good point, and I don't want to give any spoilers for the book. I won't do that, but I think at the very beginning, the principal says we have to learn to work together if we're going to solve the big problems that are facing us today. We have to learn to work together, and I think his strategy was, okay, I'm going to put this competition, like he envisioned it. He was going to create this competition. The kids would realize we have to work together. We have to talk
It's
to
gonna be
other
great.
people.
Oh yes. Oh, let's do it.
Yeah. Exactly. And as Frederick Douglass Desmer said, kids be kids, and they just couldn't help themselves. It was just this competitive nature surged out. And again, no spoilers, but
Yeah,
I
you know, it felt maybe, and I think the book did reference Lord of the Flies early on, right?
which was based on a true story, according to Frederick Douglass Desmer. Yes, yes.
Yeah. You know, it had some moments where it felt Lord of the Flies like, or Hunger Games like. You know, the chaos, right? The chaos of middle school, the chaos, as you mentioned the term herding, right?
Yeah.
Guiding, leading, facilitating. Teaching is so much work, and leading
Yes.
schools, right? The principal had such good intentions. Trust me, I know, I understand what it's like to come into an environment and you're learning the environment and trying to connect with the players while also trying to facilitate necessary change
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes is encountered by resistance, even when you
Yes.
have the best intentions.
Yes.
I know, I've been there. So I was particularly sensitive to the principal's experience and putting forth. It was a very good idea. You know, it was ideal, very idealistic, but it's a great idea to try to get the kids together, to connect with other people that they don't typically connect with. And yes, to try to, in this case, trying to work together so that they can set a tone for collaborative work and cooperating with each other to solve the world's problems, to solve societal
Right.
problems. I think is how it was framed in the book. Tell me, who is your favorite character and why?
That is such a good question. And I wish I had a really good answer. I don't. So there are parts of me in every single character. And I guess it's almost like asking, well, which of your children do you love the best? I love them all the same, differently, but the same. And so I don't know. I don't know who my favorite
I'm not
character
gonna
is.
lie, I don't love them all the same. I mean, I love
Oh,
my
who?
children all the same, but
Oh, okay.
I wasn't feeling Richie.
Oh, yeah. So
I wasn't
it's a
feeling, you know, I wasn't. It,
You mean Richie
I
the Enforcer?
yes, Richie the Enforcer. Yeah, no, I'm not feeling that. Now, this, you know, he's a youngster, so there's room to work with Richie and try to guide him.
Yeah.
But he was not one of my favorites. I'm not gonna lie.
It's okay. Richie had a long path. He had a long way to grow. But there are kids like Richie
Yes,
in
I'm
schools. They're definitely the Richies.
well aware. Well aware. A lot of them weren't my favorite either. Just telling you the truth. Some of them came around. Some of them, I came around eventually.
Mhm.
So fine, then tell me two or three of the characters that resonate with you the most.
Definitely Doug. Definitely Doug, because I think he personifies the big theme of the book, which is who gets to decide what you do with your life. And I think that was something that definitely resonated with me. I knew when I was 4 that I wanted to be a novelist, or I just wanted to write. I wanted to make up stories. I wanted to be a storyteller. And that was not the vision that my parents had for me. So it took a long time. It took a lifetime to get to do the work, the life work that I knew I was supposed to do.
Wow.
And that's why I put that on Doug. He has to deal with it within what 272 pages or so. But I think that's a really big issue. And I really liked Huey because he gets nervous. He writes backwards. I remember when I was in high school, my best friend at the time went off to summer camp. I didn't, and I wrote her a letter backwards, like the whole thing. This was back when you're writing. So I liked that. And I was also younger than kids in my class. So Travis, the shark,
The shark.
definitely. I know, right? 9 years old.
Did she really bite somebody?
Maybe that was a school legend. It was we never really resolved that issue.
Some things are better left as legend.
Right? Exactly. But she did live up to that name, didn't she?
She did. Yes. She did.
Yes. And I'll tell you one other thing. So I mentioned that my parents had very high expectations for me. I had a gap when I went from my elementary school to high school. There was a gap. But fortunately, I was a reader. So I was reading at the college level. My math and science skills needed some work, but my mother believed that every book that we got in school should come home with me. And I had a stuffed backpack that had me hunching over every day because I had to put every single book, and there were a lot, in that backpack and take it home and then sit at the table, and she would watch me, homework or not, open that book, read that book. And so wow. I give a little bit of myself to everybody.
That's great. No, that's great to know. It's also interesting to hear you talk about those expectations that parents set upon their children. I have 3 young children, so it's good for me to receive this experience that you're sharing and process it as it relates to my own parenting and my children's desires versus my desires for them.
How old are your kids?
8, 5, and 2.
Do any of them know intuitively what they want to do with their lives?
I'm not sure. I'm curious. I'm curious to listen and see what really comes out. But my 8-year-old, she's a writer, she's an artist, she's a performer. She has all of that in her.
Oh my goodness.
And so I would not be surprised if she leans in that direction. But I wanted to come from her.
That's so good. You would have been the perfect father in Control Freaks. But now you can put that on the shelf, and anytime you feel yourself leaning into something, you can pull it out and say, "Oof, am I turning into Easy Zesmer? I hope not."
Yes, I'm sure I have my moments, just like Easy did. Easy had a lot of moments, but I'm sure I have my moments. But I also know what it's like to feel that type of pressure and unwanted pressure, right? And so I think I'm very aware that my children have to pick their path, and my job is to expose them to as many opportunities as possible and to guide them along the way.
Yep.
And
Yep.
be a good cheerleader, and give good counsel. Give good counsel,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. And let them fail, because it's scary and it's sad. But I think that's one of the interesting things about Easy. His heart is in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
He wants his kids, his stepson and his biological son, to have an easier life than he did, but he's shepherding them down paths that might not be right for them.
Right. And teaching them certain things that are gonna harm them. They are harming them. You know, bailing TW out is harming them, and teaching them that his brother, it's okay for Doug to just step in and write his papers. It's causing friction in the relationship, right?
It is.
There was a lot going on in Control Freaks. This is actually a good segue. As it relates to family dynamics, especially blended families that experience divorce. What led you to develop this storyline?
So my dad died in 2017, and I was still mulling the whole concept of fatherhood, what constitutes fatherhood, when I started really digging into this book. I wanted to look at it in a variety of different ways, through a variety of different perspectives, but kind of center that on an African American family. And I was steadfast in the decision that I was not going to use any of the old tropes of the absentee Black father, the violent Black father, the you name it, but non-effective Black father. So even though Easy was divorced from Doug's mom, he was checking the boxes, right? I mean, he sent the support checks. He called on birthdays. He did all of those things. So he was not absent from that standpoint, but he wasn't physically there. It was Doug's stepfather who was there, who put in the time, who did all those things and earned the title of dad. Having divorce as a vehicle let me look at fatherhood from two different ways, and then also to look at the assumptions that family members make, particularly in a blended family. So I think Doug's a great kid, but he still calls his stepbrother the worst stepbrother in history. And TW he's an awesome kid as well, but he doesn't show any of his vulnerabilities with his stepbrother. They are not brothers. And so I just wanted to examine those dynamics. And I think divorce was my vehicle to do that.
Oh, that was great. That was great. You know, thinking about relationships, when we were talking about characters that resonate with you, and you mentioned Doug and Huey, it made me think about Chris Rock and Adam Sandler.
Okay.
that might feel random to you, but Adam Sandler received an award recently, and Chris Rock was the one that presented the award to him.
Oh, okay.
And in the intro, Chris Rock talks about a little bit of the history of the relationship between the two of them, and how it reminded him of when he was in high school, or I think it was high school, or maybe grade school in Brooklyn. And he was a Black kid in a predominantly white school. And there was like this one white Jewish kid that reached out to him, and they connected. And there was some similarity there in terms of the origins of the relationship between Chris Rock and Adam Sandler. And they've been friends for a very long time, like decades.
Wow.
And so, you know, when I was just thinking about Doug and Huey, and a little bit of, you know, their racial and ethnic background, and then thinking about this tribute that I saw recently, and Chris Rock giving the award to his friend and talking about Adam Sandler and their friendship. There was something there that I saw that was beautiful between the two individuals in both cases.
Mm-hmm. That is such a good point. So I didn't know about that friendship there, but when I was in high school, my best friend in high school is still a very close friend, and we'll just say a couple of decades have passed. We'll leave it at that. Okay. But I was the maid of honor in her wedding. She was the matron of honor in my wedding. We've been with each other through marriages and parents passing and a child being born. I mean, it can happen. It really can happen. And I wanted to show that. That's also the reason why the relationship with Dr. Yi and the Dom, Destiny Octavia Moore, was so important as well. I just wanted to show that it really can happen. So
yeah, I mean, I think about individuals that I'm still connected to. I have friends that I've been in relationship with since middle school.
wow.
You know, not a ton of them. You know, some of them
Yep.
might be more like associates or distant friends. But I have like my friend Juan Chino Sanchez. We go back since like seventh grade
Wow.
at the AB Bruce School. I'm the godfather to one of his daughters.
Wow. Okay.
You know, so and we still talk periodically. We both live in Florida now. And so I think about the importance of highlighting relationships
Yes.
and
Yes.
fostering
Yes.
relationships and
Yes.
the potential to engage in lifelong relationships. And in this particular
Exactly.
case, looking at Doug and Huey, I think it's good and important because it shows how these young men can appreciate, love one another, be vulnerable, so on and so forth.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And often Huey is the voice of reason. He's a little anxious about it, but he's still the voice of reason. And I want to point out one thing that I think is super cool. So right now, Chat GPT is the big thing. It's people are talking about how that will apply in school. If you roll back the clock, since it's usually about 18 months for a book to go from publication to hitting the stores, right? Chat GPT wasn't a big thing 18 months ago. I
Right.
didn't even know about it. But a cornerstone in this book is that Doug invents a technology that can scan the web, take a prompt, write a paper, and do all those things that Chat GPT does. And so I think it's really important as we discuss whether or not books should be done by AI to think about there's some things AI can't do. Like AI doesn't envision AI. It's a human being that does that. So just wanted to put that out there because
Oh
I think
yes.
that's really interesting.
No, this is a critical conversation that's taking place right now, and folks are all over the spectrum in terms of how they
They
feel about
are.
it. And so
They are.
we got to continue to unpack and learn and grow, try on. I'm not fully, I haven't fully concluded how I feel about AI
Mm-hmm.
and Chat GPT and these tools, but they're tools. They're tools, and I want to
Yes.
learn how to use them and leverage them to my advantage in ways that feel effective and honest.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Without losing the skills that you inherently have. I tend to think of it as this way. If you were getting surgery, serious surgery, and the doctor came in and said, well, if we use robotics, we can do this surgery much more effectively. You are definitely going to have, it'll be faster. You'll have a higher chance of success. You'd probably say yes, absolutely. But I certainly would say yes. But I would also want a human being in that operating room. So if the system went down, there was somebody who knew what to do. And I think one of the challenges with these tools is that we can become so dependent that we lose the inherent skills ourselves. And that's something to consider.
True, true, true. So through your writing, you envision Colorado's #1 school
I
for
did, yes.
unusually competitive kids, Benjamin Banneker College Prep. What constitutes the ideal school?
That is such a good question. Not that I'm a control person, but I wrote notes. So
I'm a note taker too, and I don't think that makes me
I
a control person.
um so I won't give my 100-point list, but I will give two.
Thank you.
So the
Thank you
first,
for being considerate of our audience.
but it's available on demand. No, I'm just kidding. Um, so the first thing would be resources. I think that that is super important, and I don't mean just like the snazzy building and the learning spaces with super comfy cushions. That I don't mean just that. I mean things like the low teacher to student ratio. So the kids know the teachers and the administrators and vice versa. Um, I think that that's super huge. I think that decent salaries, reasonable salaries for teachers is essential. And I think that the top rated school would be able to provide that. So I might have moved them out of, say, maybe the public school spectrum so that there is some flexibility with salaries. But I think that those are essential if you're going to attract and retain the very best teachers, because teachers work really, really hard, really hard. It would be access to things like learning specialists and books and computers and science labs and all those things that level the learning field. Let's see. It would be, now this time I'm really going to have to look down at my notes here, but innovative ways of presenting the mosaic of the people who enhance the world, who change the world. And so it's a little thing, but if you recall, there are pavers in the school that,
Yes,
you know, those
yes, with the
cement
names of
blocks.
influential
Yes,
individuals.
exactly, exactly. So kids at that school will graduate knowing that John Glenn was the first American to orbit the Earth, but they're also going to know that Luis Walter Alvarez received the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1968. And Xiang Wu worked on the Manhattan Project. And Dr. Patricia Bath was the first African American to complete a residency in ophthalmology, but she also invented an instrument that enhances cardiac surgery. So I just think finding ways to present that information so it's organic to kids and it just becomes part of their psyche is important.
Mm.
And then the second important thing is space. Um, the kids at Benjamin Banneker College Prep spend a lot of time outside. And it's nice to get out of the classroom, to breathe the air, to touch the
Right.
grass, to do those things. So those are two things. I hope among your audience are Bill and Melinda Gates so that they can contact you. We can just create the ultimate school because I have ideas.
Yes, yes. I mean, listen, I want to see all teachers across the board, private, public. So I want to see all teachers get
Yes.
paid extremely well.
Yes.
I want to see them get paid extremely well.
Yes.
I know
Exactly.
what it feels like to be on the grind as a teacher and as a school leader and have to maintain a second job just to make ends meet.
Yeah, and which is just not okay because I think society is going to rise based on the quality of the education that the younger generation receives, and we just have to pay people appropriately. That's my opinion. But
Yes, and as it relates to the outdoor time, this is what I appreciated about working in a Montessori school for a number of years is that we had a lot of outdoor time, and it wasn't just like recess time. It's like the outdoor time was kind of built into the natural flow of the school day. In our school, when I was in Texas, each classroom had their own little outdoor space, or they could go to
yes,
the deck. They had gardens, classroom gardens and whatnot. And so that it is important for our kids to be outside instead of being within the four walls for, almost 8 hours a day. It's
8 hours.
crazy.
Yes, yes,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
how is that design a good design for schooling?
I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. And we talked a little earlier about introverts, and I think introverts need a time where they can just wander off and sit quietly, because just, yeah, it can be a lot. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I appreciated that you came with this concept of envisioning what for you is the ideal school. And, part of how we make things happen is by casting vision, right? By
yes,
casting
yes.
vision, by engaging in critical conversations, and then obviously moving people towards action. So,
Hmm.
whether it's Bill and Melinda Gates or some of these other foundations, hey,
Yep,
we need to have radical vision and then take radical action to create schools that serve the needs of our children today.
exactly.
And the way schools are
Exactly.
structured, we're not doing it. It's not meeting the needs of our children. So let's
Hmm.
let's bring about a radical reform, and let's dream big. All
Yes,
right.
exactly. That's it. Dream big.
All right. So if you had an opportunity to have lunch with any author that are alive, who would it be and why?
So I'd have a little lunch party, again, personifying control. But so I would have Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, Octavia Butler, um, let's see, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou. Am I forgetting anybody? Oh, and Gene Roddenberry, all
Wow.
together.
Wow.
Wouldn't that be great?
Wow. That's a lot.
Yes, yes. But each of them, I think, envisioned what the future could be. And folks like Gene Roddenberry may not have done a novel, but think about how society has adjusted just because of Star Trek. I mean, or Bradbury and Asimov and their views of the future. Butler is just a genius, was a genius, who I had an opportunity to hear speak in person once.
Wow. Wow.
Um, yeah, so that would be my lunch party. Your invitation's in the mail.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And all I have to do was have you on my podcast. Lovely. Well, I appreciate it because I've heard Maya Angelou speak in person, and
Mhm.
so I, I I would love to have a follow up and
Yeah.
ask her some questions directly. And never had the opportunity to listen to Toni Morrison speak in person, but that would be amazing.
Wouldn't it be great?
Oh
Yeah.
my, wow, what a lineup! That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. That's awesome. So, Jan,
Yes.
what
Yes.
is a message of encouragement you want to offer our listeners?
I'm actually going to paraphrase something that you said, which is we envision change and that's how we make it. I think books like Control Freaks are great because you deconstruct them and you figure out what aspects of this school do I really like and how can I make that happen today? What what aspects of the community that Doug is part of, the neighborhood that he's part of, can I make happen today? And that's what you start doing. So I encourage everybody. Well, obviously, I encourage everybody to buy Control Freaks, but but also just find the parts of the book that are actionable and just start doing them today. And one other thing. If there are teachers out there or parents out there that have book clubs or who want to talk about this further, let me know. I will beam in to you via Zoom.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate this work that you've created in the Control Freaks. I love thinking about and talking about the middle school experience. And I'm hopeful that a lot of the folks that I'm connected to will pick up a copy and extract from the book things that they could apply to their craft. As I mentioned earlier, I think for me, as a parent, there's some stuff that I'm taken away from the book and just thinking about, all right, what are my regular routines and where can I make sure that I'm not leaning too strong in pushing my kids and into the things that I want them to do, and leaving space to hear their voice and respect the path that they want to explore, even if it doesn't always align with the path that I want for them. And so making sure that we're building that relationship, listening to one another. I'm going to express to them, what I like to see, but also respect the fact that, they're all my kids are characters, and they definitely all have minds of their own. And so, yeah, thank you for offering that through the book.
You're very welcome. Your kids are in great hands.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I wish you the best with your journey as an author and with Control Freaks. Love the book.
Thank you.
Very, very engaging. And certainly you are welcome to be on the platform anytime. So, Jan, where can we follow you? Those who want to know more about Control Freaks, want to know more about you as an author, even though you are an introvert, where can they follow you?
You can find me at my website, which is jethomasauthor.com. You can find me on Instagram, same handle, jethomasauthor. If you want me to come to an event, please contact my publisher, which is Levine Querido, and it's levinequerido.com, LevineQuerido.com.
Well, there you have it, folks. Go and follow Jan. Pick up a book. Control Freaks is the title. Author, J.E. Thomas. Middle school folks, you're going to love this one. Trust me when I tell you, I saw myself in it as the principal. And so I can relate to Dr. Yee. Read the book and identify which character you can relate to. Check it out today. Wonderful book. Thank you, J.E. Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you so much.